There are those who enter your life and love you ardently, fiercely, from the very first glance, needing no reason, nor any time to truly know the depths of you. They idolize you, they yearn for you, making you feel as if you are the very center of their universe, an overwhelming connection, seemingly orchestrated by destiny itself. But the brutal truth is, it's not because they truly see your authentic self, nor for the inherent qualities you possess. Instead, it's because you unwittingly become a mirror, reflecting their own deepest, unspoken longings, or the fragmented pieces still missing within their own unconscious. Now, imagine yourself in that very scenario. What happens when the veil of illusion finally falls, and you shed the perfect persona they've assigned to you? When you no longer fill the void within their soul, will that love remain, or will it vanish as swiftly as it came? And this is precisely the pivotal point Carl Jung dedicated his life to deciphering. For, according to the tenets of depth psychology, human beings typically love one another for only two distinct reasons. Let us explore what these are, so you may discern who truly loves times you asterisk, and who merely loves their own illusion reflected through your being. Love is not accidental. All attraction stems from the unconscious. Love, in the eyes of Carl Jung, is never random, superficial, or merely based on what the eyes can see. He believed that all attraction is the result of silent movements beneath the surface, where the unconscious keeps what we cannot put into words, sometimes even what we ourselves do not fully recognize. In modern society, many people believe that attraction begins with appearance, manner, or certain personality traits. However, Jung looked deeper into the roots, and he was not afraid to assert that these factors are merely the tip of the iceberg. The questions he raised always went far beyond where others stopped. Why are we so inexplicably drawn to someone? Jung's explanation lies in the deepest layers of the unconscious. He once emphasized, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. From this perspective, many seemingly unconscious choices in love are actually driven by what has been repressed, unresolved wounds, or deep-seated desires that have never been acknowledged. In other words, every time we feel ourselves pulled towards someone, on the outside it may seem like harmony and smiles, eyes, or conversation, but inside, it is the resonance of invisible forces within the soul. These forces might be memories, the earliest relationship patterns with our parents, an ideal image built by the collective unconscious, or simply a strange sense of familiarity that Jung called synchronicity. Nothing is random in the inner world. Every encounter bears the mark of different layers of the unconscious interacting with each other. Sometimes, we find ourselves drawn to someone for reasons we cannot explain, and we wonder, why do I feel this way? Jung affirmed that such attraction is the voice of unmet needs, the parts of ourselves that are incomplete, calling out to be fulfilled through another person. That is when suppressed emotions, missed dreams, or unacknowledged shadow aspects of ourselves find a way back, through the presence of someone we may think is destined. That is why, according to Jung, love and relationships are not simply the product of circumstances or coincidence, but a kind of complex psychological order that has been built over many years within each person's unconscious. He went even further to analyze that the recurring patterns of attraction in each person's life are signals from unconscious archetypes. When we meet someone, we are often unaware that we are responding to repressed feelings from the past, to the desire for healing, for wholeness, for being truly seen and valued. This unconscious part leads us to seek familiarity in others, even if that familiarity comes from pain, from old wounds, or from an idealized image that never truly existed. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Any attraction is a sign of resonance, a collision between the invisible forces within each person, and it is this resonance that causes both to change, whether for better or for worse. In addition to individual needs, Jung emphasized the influence of archetypes, those universal figures stored within the collective unconscious. These are not the separate creations of each person, but common motifs that appear in mythology, folktales, religion, and even recurring dreams. These archetypes serve as blueprints for our emotions and relationships, causing us to be unconsciously drawn to those who embody or awaken a particular figure within ourselves. When someone enters our life and ignites intense emotions, it is very likely that person has touched an archetype already present in our unconscious, one we may not even be aware of. Jung once said, "Archetypes are like riverbeds, which channel the flow of our psychic energy. It is these archetypes that lay out the paths for our psychological energy, making attraction cyclical, repetitive, and sometimes difficult to escape if we have not yet identified its deep origins." Thus, according to Jung, relationships that seem to explode out of thin air all have very clear roots, programmed by memories, repressed emotions, unmet needs, or deep-seated archetypes always waiting for their moment to emerge. This explains why sometimes we love someone not because they are truly outstanding or special, but simply because they awaken a part within us that we never knew existed. The journey to recognize these invisible forces is not easy, but it is the foundation for understanding true attraction, as well as the reason why relationships can profoundly change the inner life of each person. The first reason: you represent what they lack or long for within. The mechanism of projection. In the deeper layers of Carl Jung's psychology, projection is one of the core concepts explaining why people become intensely attracted to certain individuals. It is not a conscious choice, nor is it simply admiration for someone's strengths or external appeal. Behind that feeling of being drawn in lies a silent interplay between the rejected parts of the psyche, the unmet inner deficiencies, and the hidden developmental needs within each person. When Jung spoke about projection, he emphasized that it is an unavoidable psychological process, occurring continuously throughout human life. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Here, Jung pointed out the dual nature of projection. It is both a defense mechanism helping the mind confront what it cannot yet accept within itself, and a mirror, reflecting undeveloped potential. In reality, many people believe they love someone because of the admirable qualities that person possesses, but when examined closely through Jung's lens, what the other person has is often exactly what the admirer lacks or longs for within themselves. For example, an introverted and shy individual may feel captivated by someone lively and extroverted because they sense within that person something they themselves do not have or dare to express. A rational individual may be drawn to someone emotional and expressive because deep down, they recognize that their own emotional world is rigid, dormant, and in need of opening and nourishment. This attraction is not merely the psychological version of opposites attract, but the call of the unlived, undeveloped parts within each human being. The mechanism of projection extends far beyond romantic relationships, reaching into friendships, family dynamics, and even the workplace. When we admire someone, or conversely, when someone irritates or frustrates us, Jung believed that it is precisely the moment when our shadow, or our undeveloped potential, is speaking up. What we see, feel, and react strongly to in others is largely a reflection of the images, emotions, or qualities that have been rejected or repressed within ourselves. As Jung asserted, the most dangerous psychological mistake is the projection of the shadow onto others. This is the root of almost all conflicts. This applies not only to conflict, but also to admiration, attraction, and the entire process of constructing idealized images of other people. Projection can begin in a very natural and harmless way. We feel relieved and happy when we are near someone who makes us better, who helps us dare to be more authentic. But over time, if we do not recognize this mechanism, people easily fall into dependence, idolization, or lose themselves in the image they have projected onto the other person. Someone who is excessively attracted to another's confidence and openness may try to change themselves to resemble that person, instead of realizing that they themselves are fully capable of developing those qualities. If the relationship continues within the illusion of projection, the true self of both sides will gradually be covered up by unreal, idealized images, and when reality is revealed, it easily leads to disappointment, hurt, or the collapse of the relationship. A typical example is the story of people who repeatedly get into loving the cold one, loving the indifferent one, or being attracted to the distant one relationships. They often do not understand why they keep getting drawn to the same type of person, even though they know well the painful outcome. In reality, this is a clear sign of projection. They themselves may lack decisiveness, personal boundaries, or the ability to love themselves, so unconsciously they seek that completeness in another person, even though the way the other expresses it can sometimes be hurtful. If they do not recognize this, they will continue to repeat the cycle of unhealthy relationships, always searching for what is missing within themselves through the image of someone else. On the other hand, projection is also a motivation for personal growth. As Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again, in 1,000 disguises, on the path of life." Every time we feel drawn to someone, or even extremely dislike someone, it is the moment when the rejected, incomplete, or immature parts of ourselves come to the surface. If there is enough awareness and enough courage to look straight at the cause of the attraction, each person can turn the process of projection into an opportunity for growth and self-completion, instead of dependence or idolization. When you realize, what I admire in this person is actually what I am missing, and I can develop it within myself, you will become freer, and your relationships will become healthier and more balanced. Projection is also the doorway to the process of confronting the shadow in Jung's theory. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. When one dares to recognize and integrate these shadow parts, a person is no longer swept up in the cycle of attraction, disappointment, dependence, but learns to use the energy of projection to develop what is still missing within, gradually becoming more whole and mature. Especially, this process cannot happen by rational thought alone, but requires a great deal of honesty with oneself, subtle observation, and the courage to face the weak, fragile, or long-rejected desires inside. For this reason, projection in love is a double-edged sword. It is both the source of passion and can also lead to tragedy if abused or misunderstood. Jung emphasized, whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world as an event. This explains why many people tend to repeat the same old relationship patterns, encounter similar types, or re-experience old feelings, because the unconscious is always trying to achieve wholeness through the outside world. The true power of projection is only released when each person realizes its true nature, proactively acknowledges, and develops the qualities they lack, instead of continuing to assign to others the role of completing themselves. So, is there a way to recognize and free yourself from dependence on projection? Jung advised that whenever you feel a strong attraction, passion, or even jealousy, turn inward and ask yourself, what part of me is being awakened? What do I really need to develop within myself? Instead of rushing after an external object, use that feeling as a sign of your inner need for growth. Only by mastering this process can each person build healthy, mature relationships and truly accompany others, instead of remaining stuck in the illusion of projection. Moreover, Jung also pointed out that projection is not a bad thing. It is a natural instinct, a mechanism that helps people recognize themselves through interactions with the world. However, if it is not recognized, it will become a major barrier, causing people to live in a cycle of lack and disappointment. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This statement emphasizes that only by daring to look directly at the dark parts, the weaknesses, and the hidden desires inside can a person truly mature, and only then will love no longer be dependency, but become a process where two individuals grow together, complement, and unlock each other's potential. Perhaps you may start to wonder, so, aside from personal deficiencies and desires, what other factors make us so intensely attracted? Is attraction between two people merely a conversation between the missing parts within, or is there an even deeper force, like the invisible yet powerful psychological archetypes that always exist in each of us? If you have ever experienced the feeling of meeting someone you seem to have known from a past life, or sensed a wordless, unexplainable connection, join me in exploring the second reason, where archetypal images in the unconscious, anima, animus, and psychological symbols are truly the source code of the profound attraction between human beings. Have you ever realized what you have projected onto others? What do you think about the role of projection in your relationships? Don't hesitate to share your feelings or stories, because this journey to find the answer will continue to take us to the next part, where strange and mysterious psychological archetypes will be decoded. The second reason, you awaken, or reflect, an unconscious archetypal image in them. Anima, animus, and psychological archetypes In addition to projection, Carl Jung broadened the understanding of human psychology with his theory of archetypes, especially anima and animus, the vivid archetypal images of femininity and masculinity. Living in the unconscious of each person, Jung realized that within every man exists an ideal image of a woman, which he called the anima, and within every woman also resides an ideal image of a man, called the animus. These are not temporary personality traits or characteristics formed from conscious experience, but deeply rooted unconscious patterns, shaped through childhood experiences, relationships with parents, cultural influences, legends, and the collective unconscious. Thus, Jung once affirmed, the anima is not the soul in the dogmatic sense, but a natural archetype that satisfactorily sums up all the statements of the unconscious. These archetypes not only influence the individual subconscious, but also have the power to govern emotions and create powerful attraction in romantic love. Because of the silent yet persistent presence of these archetypes, when someone accidentally or intentionally activates the exact anima or animus image in another person, the feeling of connection erupts intensely, surpassing reason or ordinary calculations. It is the kind of feeling that many describe as love at first sight, or the sensation of meeting a soulmate, or a deep resonance that words can barely touch. According to Jung, the animus is the deposit, as it were, of all woman's ancestral experiences of man. And not only that, he is also a creative and procreative being, not in the real sense, but in a mythological sense, a creator of ideas, the father, or begetter, of all possible consciousness. This shows that animus and anima are not just the shadows of parents or ideal lovers, but the sum of all experiences, memories, myths, and desires passed down by the collective unconscious through many generations. When someone touches this archetypal realm, they become the living embodiment of an unformed dream, an ancient memory, or a deeply hidden symbol in the other person's soul. That is why relationships based on archetypal resonance often bring about an inexplicable feeling, as if arranged by fate. A man meets a gentle, dreamy, compassionate woman and finds himself unable to look away because she is the embodiment of the anima he has carried in his unconscious for so long. She is not merely a real woman with strengths and flaws, but becomes the figure of a dream, a source of comfort, compensation, and even a deep desire that has never been fulfilled. Conversely, a woman may feel a powerful stirring before a strong, decisive, independent man, because he unconsciously awakens the animus within her, the image of the father, the brother, the king, the protector, or the guide that she once longed for, or was nurtured through stories, movies, religion, or distant ancestral and cultural memories. This connection transcends the boundaries of time and space, creating intense emotions, even a sense of being both familiar and strange, to the point of being difficult to explain. Jung described this phenomenon with great subtlety. Where love reigns, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, there love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. When the archetype is awakened, the feeling of love easily becomes unconditional, sometimes leading to idealization, even deification of the other, as if only that person can truly complete one's soul. Those involved may mistakenly believe they have found their other half, a predestined soulmate, or a love that overcomes all obstacles, to have to do three perfect. However, this very archetypal resonance is also a double-edged sword, as it easily causes people to confuse the ideal image in their minds with the real person before them. In other words, when we love in the archetypal way, we often love the shadow of ourselves, or love an image created by the unconscious, not the person with all that they are. Many find that in the beginning, the relationship is filled with a sense of divinity and wonder, but when living together and facing reality, every difference and personal limit starts to reveal itself. The idealized feelings gradually fade, replaced by disappointment, suffering, or even collapse if both do not know how to recognize and master this deep motivation. Jung once emphasized, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Any contact between two archetypes causes transformation, either helping both mature or leading to crisis if they cannot harmonize reality with the ideal image. Besides anima and animus, Jung also mentioned other universal archetypes, such as the mother, the father, the child, the hero, the stranger, the wise old man. These lie deep within the collective unconscious, transcending the individual to become symbolic figures that anyone can feel and recognize in relationships, folktales, mythology, cinema, and everyday life. When someone carries the traits of the mother archetype, nurturing, gentle, kind, they easily become the center of attraction for those who have always felt a lack of support, protection, or have experienced pain related to the mother in the past. Similarly, a man with a strong, courageous, daring exterior is not only attractive in terms of sexuality, but also awakens the hero archetype in those around him. The resonance between these archetypes creates that strange energy people call chemistry, but in reality, it is the result of unconscious psychological collisions. What is remarkable is that archetypes do not always appear entirely positive. Anima and Animus can manifest with opposing shades. For example, a man can be attracted to a mysterious, unpredictable woman, perhaps even with a hint of the shadow, because she embodies memories or fantasies of a beauty that is both alluring and dangerous. Sometimes, a woman is attracted to a cold, distant, powerful man, the symbol of a negative animus that she needs to learn to recognize and integrate, rather than idolize or fear. Jung emphasized that only when a person is sufficiently mature in consciousness can they recognize and harmonize the energy of archetypes, so that love is no longer dependence on an idealized image but becomes a true process of the soul's growth. Every archetype is capable of endless development and differentiation. It expresses itself in ever-changing forms, yet ever remains the same. Archetypes can transform, develop, and integrate into personal identity, not necessarily maintaining a dominant role in every relationship. This requires each person to be alert in observing themselves, listening to their feelings, and recognizing when they are loving a real person and when they are idealizing an archetype from the unconscious. One of the common signs of archetypal love is the feeling of familiarity in strangeness, immediate closeness, or knowing at first sight that this person will play an important role in your life. It is not coincidence, but the call of invisible figures, collective memories, or dreams handed down through time. Such connection can bring great inspiration, healing for old wounds, or be a powerful motivation for personal change and development. But for the same reason, it can also lead people astray, immerse them in illusion, and make them lose the ability to see reality clearly. Love based on archetypal resonance is one of life's greatest trials, for it compels each person to face the most primal, mysterious part of themselves. Sometimes, the most intense, turbulent, and painful relationships are the very doorways that lead us on a journey to explore the depths of the soul, to recognize and integrate anima, animus, or other archetypes, thereby becoming more mature and freer in the ways we love and live. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. When people know how to look within, understanding the roots of attraction, they will discern what is true love, what is merely the illusion created by archetypes, and where lies the opportunity to become a more complete version of themselves. Have you ever experienced loving someone as if meeting a familiar soul from a previous life, or found yourself irresistibly drawn to someone, even though your mind cannot explain it? What do you think triggered those feelings? Was it just ordinary attraction, or was it the call of some deep-seated archetype in the unconscious? Please share your experiences and thoughts, because personal stories are always the key to understanding ourselves better. And, when the veil of the archetype gradually falls away, what will happen to those relationships that once seemed eternal? Let's discover this in the next part. Illusion and reality in love. Why do so many relationships fall apart? Illusion and reality in love. Why do so many relationships fall apart? In the early moments of a relationship, everything seems to possess its own unique magic. There is infatuation, immersion, and enchantment to the point that it feels as if the world consists of only two people. However, through the lens of Carl Jung, that magical state is often not true harmony between two real selves, but mainly the meeting of inner images, projections, and archetypes that each person unconsciously assigns to the other. We do not simply love a real-life person with their personality, habits, and imperfections. We are primarily in love with the illusion of them, a perfect image, a role, created by those parts of ourselves that have yet to be recognized. Jung once wrote, "We see only that which we are ready to see, what we know as possible for us to see." In love, it is as if our eyes are covered with a magical mist, filtering only what matches the needs, desires, and ideal models already present within our souls. This idealization is nothing strange. It is part of the psychological development process. Especially in relationships that begin with strong emotions, the other person becomes the screen onto which we project all our desires, dreams, the missing pieces within us, and even our fears. Every word, gesture, and glance is colored and amplified by the imagination and the longing for a perfect love. However, the danger lies in loving an image we have created ourselves. We are no longer truly in contact with the real person, but instead, in love with a part of ourselves painted onto the psychological wall of the other. Jung warned, "Who has fully realized that history is not contained in thick books, but lives in our very blood?" What he meant is that every experience, memory, dream, and fear of each person permeates deeply into the subconscious, and it is from there that projections and archetypes are summoned every time we are moved by someone. When someone is attracted to another, the feeling is so intense that they believe this is their true, other half, a kindred spirit, a fated connection. But in reality, most of the initial enchantment is the result of projection and archetypal resonance. The other becomes the embodiment of what we have lacked, dreamed of, admired, or suffered from in the past. And so, when the fever of love cools down, when daily reality starts to reveal itself, the archetypal veil gradually falls away, and we begin to realize that the real person is not exactly the idealized image we first created. The difference between reality and illusion then becomes clear, causing shock, disappointment, and sometimes even a crisis. Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents, not only in family, but also in love. The greatest tragedy is those parts of life never lived, the forgotten parts of the soul, which we try to fill with the image of another." It is in this stage that the relationship faces its greatest test. As the enchantment of the archetype fades, real-life issues appear. Differences in personality, perspectives, behavior, and small daily habits all become sources of conflict, argument, and disillusionment. The most dangerous thing is if each side continues to cling to their illusion of the other, refusing to accept differences, refusing to see the weaknesses, limitations, or real mistakes of their partner. The relationship will become stuck. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But to maintain a real relationship, both must learn to accept not only themselves but also the other with all their darkness, light, imperfections, and unique wounds." Many intense relationships break down quickly for this reason. At the beginning, both live in a happy dream with the idealized image the other evokes, only to find that, when living together, having to face shadows, flaws, or simply the boredom of real life, they realize that the person they were once so passionate about was actually just a version created from within their own soul. This process can happen quietly but fiercely, because the disappointment is not only directed at the other, but also at oneself, when realizing that one's hopes and illusions remain unfulfilled. Jung repeatedly emphasized that only when we dare to move beyond the stage of disillusionment and face reality does each person truly have the opportunity to understand and love one another. If one does not understand a person, one tends to regard him as a fool. This statement, seemingly simple, carries a profound message. The lack of understanding of the true nature of the person we love easily leads to contempt, disappointment, or even negative judgment. Meanwhile, if we have the courage to remove the archetypal mask, to see and accept the other as an independent, different, imperfect individual, the relationship will have the chance to enter a new stage where genuine attachment is built on the foundation of understanding and empathy, rather than illusion and possession. Perhaps that is why true love is not a journey to find a perfect person, but a process of learning to see oneself clearly, to see the other clearly, and to accept each other in every present moment. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest privilege in life is to become your true self." and real love can only exist between two individuals who respect and nurture personal growth alongside companionship and connection. Those who still cling to illusions about the other will never truly know how to love, because their love is only the projection of what they lack, desire, or fear, not a real connection between two souls. In reality, the collapse of the illusion of love is not only pain, but also a necessary psychological turning point for each person to mature. When a relationship breaks down for this reason, many people feel lost, hurt, or even fall into a state of confusion and mistrust. However, that very moment becomes a doorway for us to look back and recognize the parts of ourselves we never dared to face: loneliness, lack, unrealistic expectations, or the fear of being abandoned and hurt. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung once said. There is no maturity without loss, and no real love begins without the courage to remove the archetypal mask. It can be seen that stable, mature, and deep relationships must all pass through the challenge of illusion, must face everyday reality, and must learn how to forgive, be tolerant, and accept. Only when we no longer hide behind archetypes and unconscious projections can we truly build love on the foundation of truth, sincerity, and profound empathy. At that point, love is no longer a veil hiding fears, deficiencies, or secret desires, but becomes a place where both can grow, heal, and move forward with the truest parts of themselves. Have you ever gone through the stage of disillusionment in love? Ever realized the gap between the person you loved in your imagination and their real-life self? What made you keep trying, or what made you decide to let go? Please share your story, experience, or thoughts, because it is precisely these moments that provide wonderful material for us to learn and grow together. And, after all those disillusionments, can love become the motivation for each person to develop and complete themselves? Join me as we continue to explore in the next part. Love as a journey of individuation, a chance for growth and maturity. Love as a journey of individuation, a chance for growth and maturity. In the view of Carl Jung, love is not simply an emotional experience, nor is it something for souls content with only what is familiar. Love, according to Jung, is a vibrant and challenging journey, where each person is forced to confront themselves, their shadow, and their incomplete parts, and from there, grow, mature, and reach the fullest and deepest version of themselves. Jung never considered the collapse of love's illusions as a failure. On the contrary, he saw it as an indispensable turning point on the journey of individuation, the process by which each person becomes themselves, integrating unconscious and conscious, shadow and light within the soul. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That saying is central, not only for personal development, but also for how Jung viewed love. Because every person who enters our lives, whether a lover, a friend, or simply a stranger who brings a fleeting emotion, plays the role of a mirror, reflecting what we have, what we lack, what we desire, or what we fear. In love, that mirror is especially clear, making it harder to hide those deepest parts we usually try to cover up or avoid. People often say that we love to find our missing half, but Jung believed, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Love is not just about searching outside, but also an invitation to return within, to explore, to dialogue with ourselves. In love, every feeling, every reaction, every joy and pain is an opportunity for self-reflection, to recognize hidden potential, unnamed fears, or wounds that have existed for as long as we can remember. Therefore, it is no surprise that Jung affirmed that the collapse of love's illusions is not the end, but the beginning of a deeper developmental process. Only when the masks of archetypes and projections are stripped away do we begin to see the other person as a real human being, with all their strengths and weaknesses, with their limits and potential, with both harmonies and irreconcilable differences. From there, we can also recognize ourselves in our barest state, what we once longed for, what we once demanded, what we once ignored or hid in everyday life. As Jung once emphasized, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The path to growing up is not about trying to maintain the light forever, but about daring to look straight at the darkness, to face the limits, the flaws, and the parts of the soul that have never been lived. Everyone we love, or who loves us, whether intentionally or unintentionally, becomes a mirror for what we have yet to complete within ourselves. The person who gives us a sense of safety may be reflecting our fear of abandonment. The one who makes our heart race intensely is often the embodiment of our longing for freedom, rebellion, or discovery. The one who brings us pain may actually be helping us touch upon deep wounds from the past, the parts of ourselves not acknowledged, the emotions once repressed or denied. As Jung once wrote, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Every encounter, every collision in love is a psychological chemical process in which both are transformed. No one can remain unchanged. In this process, if we know how to listen and reflect, each person will realize that no one is born to complete us. Only we ourselves can become whole. That is why understanding, recognizing, and mastering the patterns, archetypes, and projections in love is a prerequisite for maturity. Otherwise, each of us can easily get stuck in familiar loops, always searching for missing parts in others, repeating old motifs, clinging to relationship patterns with no way out. Some people are always attracted to the distant, cold type. Others are passionate about the warm, saving type. And there are those who chase after intense feelings or protection. Behind those choices, if we do not consciously recognize them, we might mistake them for destiny, personality, or preferences, not realizing that in truth, they are just traces of incomplete inner parts, shadows not yet integrated. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Yet it is only when we dare to accept ourselves with all the light and all the shadow that we can love another as they are, not as an idealized version we have created." Love then is no longer a game of archetypes, no longer a pursuit of what is missing, but becomes the companionship of two independent, free individuals growing and maturing together on a shared journey. Such a relationship will no longer be an endless chase for what is not real, but a space for each to listen, respect, and encourage the other to become their best self. Individuation is a lifelong journey. Love plays a special role as a catalyst, a reality test for that process. Only when facing another person do we see our own limits clearly. Do we know who we really are, what we need, what we lack, and what we fear? Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Every dissatisfaction, disappointment, burst of anger, or jealousy is a sign that helps us recognize the deepest parts of our soul, the things that need to be healed, developed, and integrated. No one can truly grow if they only live in their own world, without conflict, without emotional experience, without daring to love, and without daring to be disappointed. And the most important thing is that Jung reminds us not to hastily avoid suffering or disillusionment in love. The breakup, loss, sadness, or even the sense of loneliness after a relationship ends are all necessary stepping stones that open new doors for individuation. For it is only after those stumbles that we can truly see ourselves, understand our motivations, needs, dreams, and limits. From there, each person will no longer blindly chase after outside models, will no longer search for someone else to complete them, but will proactively build inner strength, integrating both light and shadow, so that one day, they can love another person with an awakened, mature, and truly free love. It can be said that love is both the greatest challenge and the greatest gift for inner development. It is a journey full of stumbles, but also full of hope, where each person is allowed to experiment, make mistakes, make corrections, and finally become a more mature version of themselves. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. There is no awareness that does not pass through pain, just as there is no mature love that has not experienced disillusionment, disappointment, and then risen again with brighter eyes, a braver heart, and a more open soul towards oneself and others. What stages have you experienced in your journey of love? Have you ever realized that the person you loved was actually a mirror reflecting the unfinished parts within you? And what was the moment that made you truly grow or change from a relationship? Whether it was joy or pain, please share your story, your feelings, or your deep thoughts on this topic, because the individuation journey of each person is precious and unique. When we are more awakened, can we learn to love without dependence, without projection, without repeating the same old circles? Let's explore this together in the next part. The role of awareness. How can we love more consciously? The role of awareness. How can we love more consciously? No one enters love without carrying the baggage of the unconscious. Vague memories, unfulfilled wishes, old wounds, and even archetypes inherited from previous generations, or from the depths of the culture and history of their own community. From Carl Jung's perspective, the presence of projection mechanisms, archetypes, and unconscious drives is inevitable. Yet what makes a profound difference between mature relationships and stagnant ones is the level of each individual's self-awareness. If a person only loves unconsciously, led by mysterious inner forces, without understanding why they are attracted, why they love, are jealous, disappointed, or hurt, they will always be trapped in the recurring cycle of old patterns, forever searching for what is missing through others, always falling into dependence and pain. But if they can be awakened, observe, ask questions, and reflect on themselves, each person will gradually learn to love without confusing reality and illusion, without mixing up expectation and reality. Jung once emphasized, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. In love, recognizing our own shadow is not only the courage to face fears, wounds, and rejected desires, but also the process of asking ourselves, what am I truly seeking from others? Why am I attracted to this person and not someone else? What am I projecting, and what do I genuinely appreciate in the other? When we are clear-headed enough to distinguish this, true freedom begins to emerge. We no longer love someone just because they fill our void, but love for the companionship, sharing, respect, and genuine inspiration that two mature souls offer each other. This process is not easy and cannot be rushed. Jung wrote, enlightenment doesn't occur from sitting around visualizing images of light, but from integrating the darkness. Awakening in love does not come from trying to avoid the dark side, nor from fantasies about a perfect relationship, but only begins when each person dares to shine a flashlight into their inner inner corners, the unrealistic expectations, feelings of inferiority, unhealed wounds, even the ambitions to possess, control, or idolize the other. Through non-judgmental observation, each person gradually realizes, I do not need the other to become someone for me, but I need to learn how to see, understand, and nurture myself. When a person can identify their unconscious motives, they will feel less need to possess, control, or escape within a relationship, because they know that no one is born just to compensate for someone else, and no one can forever play the ideal role in someone's mind. Jung once affirmed, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. There is no universal formula for love, no relationship model that is standard for everyone. Only by understanding ourselves, understanding others, and accepting differences can we have the courage to build a healthy, lasting, and free relationship. An awakened love is the love between two independent, self-reliant people who know how to touch pain without blaming, share without imposing, and listen without losing themselves. They understand themselves well enough not to project their past onto the other, not to make their partner bear the burden of their wounds, expectations, or desires. They know when a surge of emotion is the voice of their shadow, when affection is a true resonance between two souls, and when to pause and ask, who am I loving, the person in front of me, or the archetype from my own unconscious? That awareness helps them create a safe space for truth, for weaknesses, for differences to be acknowledged, rather than an endless battle to preserve an idealized image. Jung wrote, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. By the process of turning inward, identifying, integrating, and healing unconscious drives, each person will be more proactive in perfecting themselves, thereby contributing to building relationships that are more authentic, less illusory, less dependent, and more sustainable. Love will no longer be a game of escape or possession, but a journey side by side between two free, mature individuals who know how to love the right way, the right person, at the right time. It is undeniable that mindfulness in love requires the courage to face unpleasant truths, to accept the imperfections in ourselves as well as in the other, to learn how to forgive, to be tolerant, and to let go when necessary. It is also the process of accepting that, sometimes, the end of love is a natural part of the journey of growth. Only those who are truly mindful will realize. They can feel pain, they can be disappointed, but they never lose faith in their own value, nor do they trade freedom and truth to hold on to a false or possessive relationship. Have you recognized the moments when you were truly awakened in love? When was the first time you understood that your feelings for someone were no longer a form of escape, no longer a game of projection, but a genuine encounter between two free, mature individuals? Have you ever seen yourself more clearly, understood another more deeply, because you dared to face your shadows, archetypes, and unconscious drives that Jung described? If you have experiences, stories, or deep insights about mindfulness in love, please share them with me so that each of us is not only listened to and healed, but also inspired by one another on the journey to find a love that is truly authentic, free, and enduring. The art of building conscious intimacy. After all the profound insights about projection, archetypes, awareness, and individuation, real life still requires us to act, still demands that we build, nurture, and maintain intimacy with our loved ones every single day. Especially for souls who have gone through upheaval, loss, or turbulent times, conscious intimacy is no longer a luxury, but becomes a deep need to regain safety, connection, and the feeling of being true to oneself. This is no longer a matter of theory, but an art of living, a skill that enables each person to put into action all their psychological understanding in daily reality. Carl Jung once emphasized, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Every time we touch each other with honesty, dare to reveal even the imperfect parts of ourselves, dare to open up and receive the other, without judgment, without hiding, each such moment is a chance for both souls to grow and heal together. The art of building conscious intimacy is a continuous process of practicing full presence, daring to live authentically with one's own feelings, whether fear, vulnerability, or long-suppressed desire for closeness, and actively creating a safe space for the other person to also be themselves. The first step toward conscious intimacy is learning how to listen actively, not listening to respond, not listening to debate, but listening with an open heart, simply to understand what the other truly feels and needs. It means putting aside judgment, letting go of the desire to control the conversation, and genuinely being curious, genuinely present for the other's experience. Mindful listening not only helps the other person feel respected, but also paves the way for true and deep emotions to emerge. At that point, natural dopamine appears, because real connection always brings a sense of safety and comfort. Next, be brave enough to touch emotional nakedness, allowing yourself to acknowledge and share your desires, fears, the things you are ashamed of or have hidden. This is not only the key to intimacy but also the way you truly free yourself from shame, from the pressure to always be perfect or strong. When you dare to say, "I am afraid of being rejected," "I feel hurt when I am not heard," or "I need affection right now," it is in those moments that you are inviting the other to come closer, allowing two souls to truly meet. Such nakedness does not make you weak, on the contrary. It is strength, it is emotional maturity. Another important practice in the art of conscious intimacy is learning how to move beyond shame and daring to let the other person see your dark corners. Everyone carries scars, pain, or untold stories. But only when you have the courage to reveal that part of yourself can you truly experience the feeling of being loved for who you are, and give your partner the chance to connect with the deepest layers of your being. This is the state of sustainable dopamine, appearing when you feel safe, understood, with no need to perform or struggle to prove your worth. If you want to practice, try a small exercise. At the end of the day, sit across from your loved one, put down your phone, turn off all distractions, and ask, "What today made you feel happy, hurt, or grateful?" Listen deeply, don't interrupt, don't comment, simply be present as a companion. Then, you too should share your real feelings. Even if it only takes a few minutes, if practiced regularly, this will gradually help both of you build an emotional safe zone, where all feelings are respected, no one is blamed, and no one is left behind. How long has it been since you last had a truly complete, unrushed, uninterrupted conversation with your loved one? Do you have enough courage to reveal your fears, your shame, and your deepest desires? If you do, please share your experiences, difficulties, or discoveries with everyone. And, if you'd like, try practicing this little exercise in the coming week and notice what changes in your relationship. Are you ready to dive into conscious intimacy and to experience the gentle elevation of dopamine it brings? Creating meaning after brokenness. Post-traumatic growth and personal myth-making. There is something strange in that. Even though modern psychology has helped us identify projection, archetypes, the shadow, and the role of awareness in personal healing, what a seasoned and wounded soul longs for most, after everything, is the feeling of living a meaningful story. Especially for those who have gone through breakups, divorce, or major upheaval, awakening after pain is not just about healing. It is also a drive to seek out and reconstruct a narrative identity, the story of one's life, in a new version, no longer as a victim of the past, but as someone who actively transforms and continues to write their personal myth. Carl Jung understood deeply the power of the inner story when he wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." This is not just a choice of action, but a decision about how to retell, how to restructure what has happened, so the past is no longer a chain holding us back, but becomes the raw material for growth, creativity, and renewal. This is the art of post-traumatic growth and personal myth-making. First, everyone needs to recognize that the story they are telling themselves and others about their suffering, losses, and stumbles in life is actually an underlying script that directs how they live now and shapes the future. Some people forever remain the abandoned, the unloved, the failure, or the outsider, and unconsciously, they repeat choices that allow that story to continue. Others, after experiencing enough pain, begin to pause and ask, if I am not only a victim of the past, who could I become? How could I write the next chapter of my life? Jung once affirmed, the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insolvable. They can never be solved but only outgrown. Instead of trying to erase or completely resolve suffering, he encouraged each person to use that experience as material to grow, to rise to a new stature. The process of restructuring memory meaning daring to look back at the past, but not to drown in regret or resentment, but to recognize the strengths you have built, the lessons you have learned, the new qualities you have developed, is the first step of this journey. A practical technique suggested by many psychologists is to rewrite your life story as if you were a third-person narrator. Instead of, I was betrayed, I was abandoned, my marriage collapsed, try retelling it as, there was a man who had to go through loss, but through that, they discovered resilience, flexibility, and courage they had never recognized before. By creating distance from the memory, you will realize that you are not the painful event, but the witness, the person who matured from it. The next step in personal myth-making is to actively construct a new personal myth. Choose a theme, a symbol, or a message you want to attach to the next part of your life. It might be the image of one reborn from the ashes, the pioneer of a new land, or simply the sower of happiness. Search through the treasury of culture, mythology, or even the inspiring stories you have always admired. What is the archetype that fits your story of rebirth? Once identified, try writing down 3 small things each day that you can do to prove this new myth. For example, if you are the one reborn, you might start learning a new skill, keep an emotional journal, or help others who are also on their path of recovery. Jung once said, the least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. Meaning does not come from grand things, but from the perseverance to rebuild value, tradition, and small daily joys after setbacks. Every choice, no matter how small, contributes to writing the next chapter of your story. And only when you actively create your narrative identity will you stop seeing yourself as a victim of fate, and instead become the storyteller, the creator, the one who writes the myth of your own life. Here is a simple practice you can try. Choose a keepsake, a photograph, or an object tied to your pain, and write a letter to your past self, describing what you have learned, the strengths you now possess, and the things you are grateful for because of that experience. Or try writing a short paragraph about yourself 5 years from now, not from a place of fear or shame, but with the belief that you are someone who can create meaning out of anything that happens. Would you like to share who you want to be in the next chapter of your life? What theme, symbol, or message do you want your life story to revolve around after all you have been through? What makes you feel that you are no longer a victim, but the one creating new meaning? Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts, or try the small practice above, because when you dare to rewrite your story, you are giving yourself the power to be reborn, to grow, and to live fully regardless of any losses in the past. The source of aliveness, learning to live joyfully, to play, and to be reborn. After loss and long periods spent struggling with pain, many people gradually realize that what truly exhausts them is not just the old hurt, but also the sense that every experience in life has become heavy, colorless, and devoid of joy. They live cautiously, hesitantly, making every little thing serious, losing both the urge to experiment and the natural curiosity that was once an essential part of childhood. Carl Jung once said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. This reminds us that the essence of vitality and creativity does not lie in willpower or intellect, but in the ability to play and to dare to experience life with a heart as open as a child's. After heartbreak, many seek meaning through contemplation or healing, but a deep, lasting source of dopamine and true emotional renewal actually comes from the ability to live joyfully, to dare to play, to welcome the new, and even to laugh in the face of failure. This is no longer about romance or finding someone else to fill the void, but about relearning the art of joyful living, a simple skill often forgotten due to obsessions with success, the fear of being hurt, or the belief that joy belongs only to the young. To truly awaken the source of aliveness, each person needs to allow themselves to take a break from playing the roles of the strong, the successful, the perfect, or the ever-mature. The first step is to permit yourself to try something new, even if it means making mistakes or failing. Joining an art class, doodling, learning to dance, singing even if you're not good at it, or venturing out alone on a picnic, hiking, baking, writing short stories. All are small rituals that release energy that has been suppressed for so long. Jung once emphasized, "The debt we owe to the play of imagination is incalculable. Every moment you allow your imagination to create freely, you are repaying a debt to the child within, helping yourself to be reborn into a new, vibrant energy for living." Not only limited to personal creative activities, practicing mindfulness aimed at achieving a flow state. That state of deep immersion and energy, when you are doing something you love and forget about time, is a pathway to enduring vitality. You don't have to be skilled or successful in any discipline. You just need to choose something that brings you joy and focus entirely on it, free from judgment. It could be gardening, cooking, fixing a car, painting, calligraphy, playing a musical instrument, or even something as simple as walking and watching the clouds. These moments allow natural dopamine to arise. Joy flows from the sense of being alive, of creating, without being confined by expectations of achievement. There is a small but extremely effective ritual you can try today. Write down 5 things you used to be passionate about, playful with, or creative with as a child, but haven't revisited in a long time. Choose one, no matter how silly it may seem: blowing soap bubbles, building with Legos, jumping rope, riding a bike aimlessly, and devote half an hour to doing it with the spirit of a curious child, unafraid of mistakes or of being laughed at. You will find your body and mind gradually opening up, old wounds seeming to lighten, and joy, that primal dopamine, beginning to flow again. Jung once wrote, "In every adult, there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming, is never completed, and calls for unceasing care, attention, and education." If you know how to nurture and listen to that child, you will always keep your vitality, your curiosity for discovery, and the courage to try, to fail, and to try again regardless of age or whatever your past may be. So, are you ready to allow yourself to live joyfully, to dare to play, to dare to be reborn not for anyone else, but for yourself and the eternal child within you? This week, what new thing will you try? What forgotten joy will you revisit simply because adults aren't supposed to do that? If you wish, share your experience, feelings, or the small ritual you tried with the community. Who knows? Your joy might just inspire and awaken the aliveness in someone else who needs it. So, we have journeyed together to lift the psychological veil and decode Carl Jung's perspective on the forces of attraction between people. Love is not some random miracle. It is a highly complex and rule-bound psychological mechanism. According to Jung, people love you not simply because you are yourself, as your conscious mind might think, but more importantly, because you represent something unconscious within them, something they lack, are searching for, or a psychological archetype they have carried for a long time. You are the mirror that reflects their deepest longings, the unaccepted shadows, or the embodiment of archetypes that yearn to be expressed. Understanding these two profound reasons, you will become more mature in your relationships, break free from illusions of perfection, and learn how to truly cherish both yourself and those around you in the most authentic way. This is a truth that can be shocking, but it is also liberating. It helps you stop trying to become someone else to please others, because you now know that real attraction stems from your wholeness, including all your cracks. Now that you are aware of these unconscious motivations, ask yourself, what part of my soul is awakening when I love or am loved? View relationships not merely as exchanges of feelings, but as opportunities to look deeply into your own and others' inner worlds. When you live authentically, facing both your darkness and your light, love will no longer be an illusory game, but a journey of self-discovery and self-development in its truest form. The journey back to the self is a lonely one, but love is the bridge that gives it meaning. Let's discuss. In which relationship have you recognized Jung's two reasons most clearly? Have you discovered any of your own shadow parts through love? Leave your comments below. Don't forget, if this content has helped you see love and yourself more deeply, please like and share this video so this valuable message can reach more people. And subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next deep dive psychological analysis.